Mr. Chairman, in some respects, the policy regarding the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan come down to the subject of leadership. And as I've said, leadership is sometimes simply a question of looking into the future, seeing what's inevitable, and doing what you need to do to make the future come faster. I think that's true in both the case of Iraq and the case of Afghanistan. In the case of the Israelites in Egypt, Moses did not say to the Pharaoh, "Would you please let my people go starting 2 or 3 years from now?" Instead, what he said is, "Let my people go now." We all know that sooner or later, our troops will be withdrawn from Iraq, they will be withdrawn from Afghanistan. And so the question is, why not now? Now, if you ask that question to the other side, the people who want to perpetuate these wars, the answer is always the same in one form or another. That answer is something bad is going to happen. But what that really means, when you get down to it, is that something bad might happen. Nobody knows for sure what might happen. They're speculating that something bad might happen. But you can be sure that if the war is perpetuated, something bad will happen. And that is the loss of American lives, the loss of foreign lives, the loss of our national treasure. In the case of Iraq, $3 trillion already, and the amount grows every day. This in a country like ours with a total net worth accumulated over more than 2 centuries of $50 trillion. We have taken 6% of what our great-grandparents and our grandparents and our parents produced and left to us, and everything that we've toiled to produce over the course of our lives, and everything that our children have produced. We've taken 6% of all of that and dumped it into the sands of Mesopotamia and lost 4,000 American lives and countless Iraqi lives to boot. Now, this is what happened because we entered into this war, because we continue this war, because the war continues to this day. We have an enemy in this war. The enemy is called Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda in Iraq, Al-Qaeda in Pakistan, wherever they might be, but that's the name they go by. And ask yourself, what could they have possibly done to inflict that harm on us? What could Al-Qaeda have done to make us lose $3 trillion, 4,000 American lives, countless lives of other people? What could they have possibly done? They would have literally had to vaporize New England in order to inflict the same amount of economic damage on us to destroy 6% of our economy. It simply wasn't possible, it isn't possible, it never was possible. And that's why the war was such a mistake to begin with. It was born in sin, it lives in sin, and in the end it will die in sin. It never should have started, and it never should be perpetuated, because every day the war continues. Every single day is another day that we risk American lives. On many occasions we lose American lives, other people die, and again, our national treasure is dissipated until, in the end, it will be gone. As Senator Kerry once asked, famously, how do you ask a man to be the last man to die in Vietnam? It's a good question. How do we ask a man today to be the last man to die in Afghanistan? How do we ask an American soldier today to be the last American soldier to die in Iraq? There is no good answer to that question. There's no good answer to why we continue to perpetuate these wars, knowing full well that they will end. And they'll end only one way. Paul Simon once had a song called "There's 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover." There actually are 50 ways or more to start a war. That much is true. Once the Europeans fought a war because a pirate cut off a man's ear, the War of Jenkins' Ear, and that plunged 2 different nations into war for years. At another time, a murder was committed. A man was shot. One man, only one man. He happened to be Archduke Ferdinand. And an entire continent was plunged into war. That was the origin of World War I. There's all sorts of ways to begin a war. There's all sorts of ways to perpetuate a war. The 100 Years' War in Europe was fought for more than 100 years, left 2 different countries, both England and France, absolutely penniless, as many wars often do, for the simple reason that it takes an awful lot of effort to build a school, almost no effort at all to blow it up. And the same thing is true of anything that you can create. So wars destroy, and very often they destroy the countries engaged in them. In the case of America, when America starts a war, when America is involved in a war, we are so strong, we are so powerful, that the only way to end a war is for us to end it. There is only one way to end a war that America is involved in, and that is for us to decide as a country, enough is enough, we're done. We spend more on our defense than all other countries combined, and the result of that is that these decisions are made by us, often by the people in this room, often by the President. And it's up to us to decide when enough is enough, when enough people have died, when enough money's been lost, when the price in both blood and money is simply too high. I submit that we reached that point in Iraq a long time ago. We reached that point in Afghanistan a long time ago. In the case of Afghanistan, within 2 months after 9/11, we had expelled the Taliban government from the capital. Within 3 months, we had expelled al-Qaeda from the country, and our enemies were no longer even in Afghanistan at that point. They were in Pakistan, and they remain there today. It's not a secret. Everybody knows it. So the result of that is within 2 months or 3 months after 9/11, we had won our victory in Afghanistan. And at some later point, even in Iraq, I seem to remember our president staying on an aircraft carrier, and behind him the giant sign, "Mission Accomplished." And yet both these wars go on and on and on for one reason only. It's because we, Americans, decide to perpetuate them. And we do so out of fear, out of the sense that something bad might happen, without realizing that something bad happens every single day that we are at war. So there may be 50 ways to start a war, but there's only one way to end it, and that's for us to end it, and hopefully not too much longer from now. I think the President missed an opportunity. He took office with a great deal of goodwill on the part of not only my party, the Democratic Party, but also on the part of good people all around America who simply want better lives for themselves. Let's not squander that opportunity. We all deserve a direction that we regard as the right direction. There's too many people in this country, even today, who think we're going in the wrong direction. In Iraq, the wrong direction is simply the same direction. The same thing is true in Afghanistan. The wrong direction is the same direction. We voted for change. We deserve change. That's just as true with these foreign wars as it is with anything else. We know that at some point in the future, these wars will be over. And with regard to what the situation will be then, we'll know that George Bush started these wars, and I sincerely do hope that Barack Obama will end them. If not right now, then as soon as possible. And then at that point, the poet Percy Bysshe Shelley will tell us what the circumstances are at that point. And I yield to Percy Bysshe Shelley for a moment or two. He described those circumstances in the poem Ozymandias. This is what those circumstances will be like when these wars are over. I met a traveler from an antique land who said, "Two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read, which yet survived, stamped on these lifeless things. The hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. And on the pedestal these words appear. My name is George W. Bush, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare. The lone and level sands stretch far away. The lone and level sands will stretch far away when these wars are over, these monuments to the mistakes of our previous president. But in the end, that's what it will be, simply a statue in the desert, pointless, endless, bare. With regard to the issue of health care, we are now waiting for the Senate to act, this House having acted quite a while ago now. And I have to wonder why. Why are we waiting so long? What facts are different today, on this day in December, than were any different in November, were any different in October, any different in September, August, July? What can we do today that we could not have done then? I think the sad fact is nothing. Nothing has really changed. The fundamental facts are the same. Americans are still denied care every single day on the basis of pre-existing conditions, on the basis of reaching lifetime caps. There are still millions upon millions of Americans who have no health care coverage. There's 1 million who every year go bankrupt because of that. And there are thousands upon thousands who die every single month for the simple reason that they have no health care coverage. That's been true not only for this month, not only for last month, but for year upon year. And we Democrats in the House of Representatives, we took it upon ourselves with the political capital that you, the American people, have given to us. We took it upon ourselves to make that our priority once we had done what we could to steady the shaken economy. We delivered. We did what we needed to do. And we have waited and waited and waited for the Senate to do what it needs to do. Now, I pointed out here on this pedestal several weeks ago that the cost of delay is death. People die every single day, 121 of them, 122, every single day because they have no health care coverage in America. And I pointed out that there are people here in this chamber who are dead set against health care reform, even at the cost of the lives of their own constituents. I gave their names. I gave their numbers for how many people would die in each of their districts on account of our not passing health care reform. Now I think it's time to do the same for the obstructionists in the Senate, those people who think that health care reform doesn't serve their own purposes and they're therefore willing to deny it to their own constituents. This is not a case of one state opting out. This is a case of senators en masse deciding, one by one, that there will be no health care reform, not just for their states, but for all America. And so what I've done is I've created another list. This is a list of states and a list of those who die in that state, one by one, on account of there being no health care coverage, not once, but year after year after year. And now I propose to provide that list to you all. You'll be able to see it at our website later on today. In the state of Alabama, the number is 541 deaths each year. In the state of Alaska, 124 deaths each year. In the state of Arizona, 1,185 deaths each year. In the state of Connecticut, 326 deaths each year. In my state of Florida, an astounding 3,542 deaths each year. In Georgia, 1,640 deaths each year. In Idaho, 217 deaths each year. In Indiana, 727 deaths each year. In Iowa, 272. In Kansas, 329. In Kentucky, 609. In Louisiana, 800. In the state of Maine, 123 deaths each year. In Mississippi, 518 deaths. In Missouri, 714 deaths. In Nebraska, 216 deaths. In Nevada, 450 deaths. In New Hampshire, 132 deaths. In North Carolina, 1,424 deaths. In Ohio, 1,279 deaths. In Oklahoma, 550 deaths. In South Carolina, 693 deaths. In South Dakota, 88 deaths. In Tennessee, 883 deaths. And in the state of Texas, 5,857 deaths each year for lack of health coverage. In Utah, 342 deaths. In Wyoming, 69 deaths. And on it goes. And for those senators who have shown some reluctance or some lack of interest in health care reform, I'm going to provide your names right now to go with your states. In Alabama, I'm talking about Jeff Sessions. I'm talking about Richard Shelby. In Alaska, Lisa Murkowski. In Arizona, John Kyle and John McCain. In Connecticut, Joseph Lieberman. In Florida, George Lemieux. In Georgia, Saxby Chambliss and Johnny Isaacson. In Idaho, Mike Crapo and James Risch. In Indiana, Dick Lugar. In Iowa, Chuck Grassley. In Kansas, Sam Brownback and Pat Roberts. In Kentucky, Jim Bunning and Mitch McConnell. In Louisiana, David Vitter. In Maine, Susan Collins and Olympia Snowe. In Mississippi, Thad Cochran and Roger Wicker. In Missouri, Christopher Bond. In Nebraska, Mike Johans and Ben Nelson. In Nevada, John Ensign. In New Hampshire, Judd Gregg. In North Carolina, Richard Burr. In Ohio, George Voinovich. In Oklahoma, Tom Coburn and James Inhofe. In South Carolina, Jim DeMint and Lindsey Graham. In South Dakota, John Thune. In Tennessee, Lamar Alexander and Bob Corker. In Texas, John Cornyn and Kay Bailey Hutchinson. In Utah, Robert Bennett and Orrin Hatch. And in Wyoming, John Barrasso and Michael Enzi. Please remember these names. These are the people who have stalled health care at this country. These are the people who have watched when day after day, month after month, people go broke, people remain sick, and people even die because they have no health care in this country. And I want to assure each one of you who has done anything to obstruct health care reform in this country that people will remember. Maybe not the people who die, but the people who love them, the people whose names I read day after day at our website, namesofthedead.com, and the people whose stories I told day after day. These are people who are gone, but the names, the list grows every single day until we solve this problem. And then, in the end, when we do solve this problem, and it's inevitable, every other industrial country in the entire world has health insurance for everyone. When we do join the ranks of those countries, people are going to remember who made that happen and show kindness and love to them. People are going to remember who blocked it, and they'll show undying hatred. People are going to remember. And you'll remember too. You'll remember that when the time came for you to do something for your fellow man, to stop the suffering, to stop the hurt, to stop the pain, and to stop the dying, you did nothing or you didn't do enough. You're going to remember that, and you're going to know that blood is on your hands. May God have mercy on your soul. I yield the rest of my time.
The gentleman will suspend. The chair would remind the member to refrain from engaging in personalities toward the Senate or its members. Remarks in debate may